What if our stories weren't just about the past, where we've come from and where we are now? But what if our stories contained the clues and insights that would help us understand who we're becoming and where we might go next? This is Lead with Story, a podcast from Forerunner Story Co., where we explore how our stories not only provide insights to who we are and where we are, but where we're going and who we might become. I'm your host, Mike Tiesinga, and this is Lead with Story. Disclosure. Client stories may not be representative of the experience of other customers and are no guarantee of future performance or success. Registered representative securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisor representative Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Generations Financial Planning and Wealth Management are not affiliated. Cambridge does not provide tax or legal advice. Welcome to another episode of Lead with Story. Today, I am here in Battle Creek, Michigan with the Generations Financial Planning crew, team, experts. Which of those do you guys like the most?
Team.
All right, team it is. And before we jump into understanding a little bit about who they are and what they do, I'm going to let them take a second to introduce themselves. So how about we start over here with Eric? Would you just introduce yourself, say your name and how long you've been doing what you're doing with Generations.
Erik Smith, and I've actually been in this role as a financial advisor since 2008. Great time to get in the business.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get into that a little bit. Yeah.
Nick Acri, been here with Erik for the last 6 years, came right out of Western Michigan University and started here. So this has been my career thus far, is financial planning.
All right, great.
And Dylan Thomas, I joined Erik a little over 4 years ago now. Also a graduate from Western Michigan University. Did have a couple other jobs before this one, but ultimately knew this is where I wanted to be. So been very happy the last 4+ years.
You knew that Generations was where you wanted to be, or in this field is what you wanted to be doing?
This field, the industry as a whole,
Okay.
Stock market, financial planning, all of that has always interested me. I just needed an in with somebody to get started, and was lucky enough to get into contact with Erik back in 2021.
All right, fantastic. Now you both are Western Michigan grads, Broncos. Erik, are you as well a Western Michigan alum? What was your schooling background?
Actually, went into the Air Force right after high school. So,
And how long did you serve there?
just a couple of years.
Okay.
Got out just before Desert Storm.
Tell us a little bit about your journey to getting here in 08. Obviously, Desert Storm was a little bit before 08. You mentioned that, but
Yes.
what's some of your journey to getting here?
So I was in the Air Force right out of high school. Came back to Michigan, was in the automotive field. Worked my way up to quality engineer with the company I was with, Magna International, and then met my permanent wife because I'd gone through a divorce previously. But she was in the mortgage business in 02, and it looked pretty good. She worked from home or commuted to the offices, and so it looked attractive to me. Was a risk walking away from a comfortable salary to go straight commission, but was rewarded for at least 4 years until the financial crisis hit. And that's what inspired me to go after my lifelong dream of becoming a financial advisor, and fortunately gave me the bankroll to live through the starvation years of starting the business. So
Yeah, I can't imagine what that was like starting a business around 08 or getting into it at that time.
it was definitely a challenge. Both my wife and I, in fact, we, for that, the 2007 Halloween party, we dressed up as homeless people because both of us, the companies we worked for, had gone out of business.
Oh.
So it was a challenge, but like I said, this is what better time than to start. So it's been very rewarding.
What did you all learn during that time that even helps you now in your own role in the work you do, but even in helping provide the guidance and insights to the people you work with?
The best advice I had for anyone at that time was to change the channel. National Geographic isn't nearly as depressing.
All right, so watch something else on the news.
That's right.
Get a different sound.
That's right. And with the political pressures we've seen more recently, that's been the same advice, because there's been a lot of pressure on the media. And of course, the media seems to be more single-sided, regardless of which side you pay attention to. So it's again, time to change the channel.
Yeah. And how would you all, Nick and Dylan, you can chime into this too. It seems like, 2008, you have cable, some internet. Now, I imagine people you're working with can come in with all sorts of things that they're just terrified about one day or another, whatever news source, social media, TikTok, whatever it might be. How does that contextualize even for you all when you're working maybe with new clients, the change in the channel? What does that look like to help them understand maybe the long game that you all are helping them with, rather than the way the winds change on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, firstly, it's important for the clients to realize too that no matter what market cycle we're currently in, there's always somebody out there that's calling for a market crash, or the opposite, the market's going to go crazy for the next 12 plus months. There's always people out there calling that, and it's easy to come across those headlines, but always just assure them that we're actively managing their portfolios. We take into account economic data that comes out each month, each quarter, market momentum. It's a combination of all that, and making the changes we feel is necessary at the time. So we do get clients from time to time that they'll see, maybe it's a specific investment, they'll bring it to us and ask our thoughts on that. But for the most part, I mean, just ensuring them that we are actively paying attention.
Anything you would add?
Yeah, I think the other thing there is understanding where the client comes from, what their past experience with money has been. You have certain generations of people, and not to generalize, but say somebody's parents grew up in the 30s with the Great Depression, they're going to have a much different view on money than somebody who grew up in the 80s and 90s, where the markets were completely different and investing was different as a whole. So first, getting to that level of understanding with the client, and a lot of that is just through meetings and conversation, and then understanding how I can best communicate what's going on right now in the market with you to ultimately achieve your goals. That doesn't mean the client's always going to like to hear that, hey, we got to stick the course through this tough time, but it does mean that we can communicate with them more effectively, whether that's how I'm speaking to you or the examples I'm using.
It would seem like each of you, and collectively as just a profession, one of the best attributes you all could have is being that sort of calming, reassuring, maybe not voice of reason, but just like, hey, we're going to be with you through this process. Does that seem fair?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And on that, we also like to make clear to the clients when they work with us, they're getting a team approach. So it's not just one individual advisor that's making all the decisions on their portfolio. The three of us, soon to be four of us, we're communicating every day, and we make all those decisions collectively. It doesn't mean we all agree with one another on everything. It's good to have both sides of the coin on from that aspect, but we do operate as a team.
Tell me a little bit about, and whoever wants to take this can take this. Like, what does that look like? I can imagine what that looks like, but for someone who is maybe coming in for the first time, and say they meet you, Nick, right off the jump, and you're their primary point of contact, what does that team approach look like amongst the three of you as you help lead and guide them?
I think that first meeting, say they come in and they meet me, really expressing to them that they really are getting three minds behind the scenes. So I may be, because of location or whatever it is, your main point of contact, but understand when we're managing your money or we're writing your financial plan, we are actively talking to each other and bouncing ideas off of one another. I may have a lot of experience with XYZ, and Erik may have found himself in a similar situation and done something different that either worked or didn't work. And so we pass those ideas back and forth to one another, ultimately to get to what we believe is the right solution for the client. And then, of course, you go back to the client and express that. We often like to have two advisors in each meeting if we can, just so that when a client's speaking, we can understand, hey, did I hear something a different way than what Erik or Dylan heard something as, and picking up on those different cues. And that really seems to help in after the meetings and talking to each other about where do we see this client going? What do we need to do for them? How do we think they took a suggestion or a recommendation that we made? We may see it differently. And as a team, that's helped us uh, discuss those different items with each other and doing what's right for the client.
And Erik, has this always been the approach that you've been a part of, is that team approach, or how have things evolved over your time in this field?
Generally speaking, most advisors out there, when I started, and I think many still are individual practitioners. When I started the acquisition process with the advisor that started this particular office, the most important thing I think is that the compatibility between advisors. It was interesting though, because the dynamics did change a little over time as the expectation was that that advisor was going to ultimately be retiring. So yes, he was an intricate part of making what Generations what it is today, but to take it to the next step, I think the team approach really, you know, the previous advisor and I would team up together with new clients as well. But with the ultimate goal and understanding would be that the client would end up being working with me as he was ultimately going to be retiring. And I think in most cases, the prospective client and or client understood that. Now, with the approach that we have, each of us being part owner in the business, every client and prospective client understands that they're working with a shareholder of the company that has a vested interest in the success of the company and works more as a team instead of transitioning from one advisor to another. So the dynamics have changed a little bit in that aspect, but I think all for the better. We have our general meetings, and every meeting there's a follow-up email that's sent out. So even though there may only be one advisor in that particular meeting, all the other advisors are copied on that, and quite often there may be some feedback that the other advisor might kick back saying, hey, I see you talked about this. Had you considered this? So there's a lot of that goes on, and I think on an average day, it's quite unusual that there isn't a phone call between the three of us from one to the other for whatever item might be on the mind there.
Yeah, I've just found that fascinating and even just encouraging that in a field like this, where from someone outside of the industry, my assumption would be individual practitioners, but to hear, yeah, there's this team working together to find the best solution for your clients. We'll get maybe into more to the team stuff and what you each bring to the table there, but I want to get back to hearing each of your journeys there. So Nick, would you just share, what was your journey into this role?
Yeah. Well, we go way back. Supposedly, Erik and my dad crossed paths in an airport quite a while ago, all the way back in 2014. And my dad advocated for me that I was interested in the stock market and finances and things like that. And it just happened to come to fruition a number of years later that I would actually take a pay cut from an internship that I had to come and learn what financial advising was about and understand where this company was going and what Erik was really looking for as kind of the next generation of this business was going to be. I stuck with him through college, and then luckily when we teamed up, I was early enough to get my certified financial planning degree from Western Michigan, and that allowed me to sit for the CFP a little bit earlier than what I would say most could. So that was a big help. That the timing of that was pretty fortuitous. And then through college, ended up coming on full time after that. And within 3 years, as Erik promised, I was offered partnership. And that was a really rewarding thing for me to be able to go home and say, hey, what I'm doing at work, it doesn't just stay at work or go off into the ether and all of a sudden, I'm not responsible for anything. I hit the send key and that's it. No, I'm actually responsible for people's lives and the business itself and the clients that I help actually in turn end up helping me and helping us and helping our firm as a team. We're able to provide for, all of our employees and their families based on what we do. And that's a really, it's a great feeling to have.
Yeah. What was one of the biggest adjustments from going from theory and school to being in the actual seat of being an advisor?
Yeah, there's a lot more thinking on your feet when you're in the meeting with a client, understanding how they feel about a recommendation or, again, their experience with money, and being able to shift your tone or shift kind of you may have had a plan to show something to the client, but now you've got to adjust that on the fly. Whereas in school, it's a lot more about, here's the book knowledge and here's how you would apply it to an example case. But now I might be applying 2 or 3 things at once to any individual client and making those adjustments all while we're having a conversation. So I would say just the speed at which information comes at you and you have to react to it is probably the biggest difference from school to being in the field.
Yeah, I imagine that's probably the case in almost any job, but in this situation where, the stakes might feel higher, especially for a client coming in, they're like, okay, and even hearing like, oh, this guy's kind of new. How do I enter this? But it probably felt pretty neat to be able to be trusted by Erik, but then two, oh, I can do this. I can cut this.
Yeah, you definitely, the first couple experiences, what you would say are trial runs, for me, you definitely feel uncomfortable at that sense of, am I actually in the position to be able to make these recommendations? I mean, the tests say I passed, but this is somebody's real money. This is their hard-earned, in many cases, life's work that we're managing. And so it was a lot of pressure at first, but as you practice and gain a little bit more confidence, you find more of a reward in that than you are fearful of what could go wrong, I think is the best way to say it.
Yeah. Neil, how about you? What was your path to ending up here?
Yeah, so graduated high school from Homer, which is a smaller town here in southern Michigan. And I actually bounced around to a few different colleges. Played 1 year of baseball at Jackson College. I actually did go to Central Michigan at one point, but I graduated from Western, so got to see both sides of that rivalry. But similar to Nick, I graduated with a finance degree. I wasn't able to go through the financial planning program. It was just getting started as I was finishing up, so unfortunate there. But still enjoyed my time there. Didn't major in accounting because I didn't strictly just want to look at numbers all day, which might sound a little funny hearing it from someone not in this industry, because a lot of people think just numbers, but there's so much more to this industry than just the numbers. The relationships you build with the clients are meaningful. But my first 2 jobs, once I graduated from Western, were in the accounting departments at both places. One of them being a bank, the other being an automotive manufacturing facility. But got let go during COVID when all that was going on, and really it was that time that I found out and realized exactly what I wanted to do, and it was this. Next step was just finding somebody that I can start working with, and it was at that time that I got in touch with Erik. I think it was fall of 2020 and started those early conversations, and I think I talked to him every 2 or 3 weeks for a few months, and then ended up coming on full time with Nick after he graduated. So the timing was nice for us to go through our licensing exams. Could bounce questions off each other through that process, and then ultimately ended up getting my CFP. I spent a little over a year now with that, and also am now partner in the practice as of the first of the year.
You mentioned that moment where you were laid off of the other job, but then you said there's a moment where I realized. Could you describe, like, was there an event that happened where you just finally connecting the dots from your past that this was the actual role you want to step into?
Yeah, I mean, the stock market in particular has always been an interest to me throughout all of school. I just didn't know how to get started. And it was just that time that I had a little bit of time for myself to put some thought into it and send out resumes, stop into some local offices, And one of those resumes I sent in wasn't actually to Erik, but it was to a CPA in Jackson. And he was looking at my resume and realized that I had more of a finance background, more so than an accounting. And he knew of Erik. He was potentially looking for somebody, so he's actually the one that connected us. So I think just having that time to think and put a plan together.
And what a gift to have someone else see your resume and could have said, I can make this guy work. But instead, he was able to acknowledge and recognize, hey, actually, he might be better suited over here to make that connection for you. That's got to be pretty encouraging to have someone help lead you on that path.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for that connection that was made.
For the listeners, whoever might stumble upon this podcast, let's do some disambiguation here. The difference between finance and accounting. You mentioned it when you were just talking about your journey. Could you guys give like some quick little differences between the work you do and maybe other financial professions based on however you guys encounter the different questions you guys might have?
From my little bit of experience in accounting, it just seems like everything's black and white. It's all numbers. You got to make left side and right side equal, balance out. Whereas financial planning, there's a lot of gray space where the client has different goals, and maybe it's a scenario where the spouses have different goals from each other, but you're still trying to find a plan that will work and meet everyone's goals. So starting from there, you can start piecing things together into different strategies and say, well, we can do this to accomplish this and things like that. So it's not always just this decision is going to be best. There's so many options available out there to make things work.
They kind of let clients know that a financial plan isn't something that you just do once. Life happens. Things are going to happen in individuals' lives, family lives, whether it's divorce, death, children, all of that. The plan is a living, breathing document that adjusts according to their own lives. So it's important to make sure that it's being constantly monitored to make sure that what we're doing will ultimately meet the client's needs in the end, and monitor that along the way.
So let's talk about the approach you all take when you come in. I hear that's very personal, very relationship based. You guys are we've hit this point several times, like meeting with folks with some of like the things they care about the most, maybe their life savings, their life's work. When someone first comes in, what is that approach? Where do you guys begin with a client to begin to shape that plan and some of the scenarios or factors you all consider?
I think it's, at least for me, it's really a goals-based questionnaire, going back and forth and understanding more about these clients' lives or potential clients' lives, and maybe having them do a little bit of soul searching and figuring out, what is it that I want my money to do for me. And in a lot of cases, it's not just make the number as big as possible. It's, I want to provide so much to different charities. I want to be able to help my kids with a down payment on a house. And then through those discussions, we can almost work backwards and figure out how to make the numbers work for the client.
In some cases, it's not possible, and that's something we have to explain to the client or prospective client, letting them know that, maybe your dreams are a little bit unachievable and we should bring them into something a little bit more realistic. Or, I know you said you wanted to retire at 50, but maybe 58 is going to be the number that's going to work better for you based on your personal savings rates, things like that. So it's as much delivering the money to the purpose as it is educating the individual on what realistic is.
What are some areas that you all find here in 2025 that people generally need the most education on? Are there one or two things that you kind of have the same conversations over and over that when people are coming to you to begin working with you all?
One thing I think is discerning between what's real and what's not. There's a lot of information out there, and some of it's applicable to a client situation, but a lot of it isn't. And being more of a sounding board for those clients, I heard such and such on the news, I'm interested in such and such an investment, and being able to relate that to why it may or may not be right for that client I think a lot of that is difficult for people to understand. It's something that AI can't necessarily solve for you, right? You hear something on the news and you're like, oh, well, that sounds like it should work for me. Well, here's a bunch of reasons why it does or does not work, or why that information is in fact, true or not. And so those are a lot of the questions that I field from clients is, I heard about this, or my son or daughter brought this up. What are we doing to either match this strategy or change this strategy? And so discerning what is real and what is not for those clients, I think, is a pretty large part of my day to day.
Anything else that you find you're regularly addressing with clients?
I mean, there's a lot of clients that have multiple different accounts depending on how they've saved their money, and each account has its own rules and tax consequences. So, although we're not tax professionals, we try to be tax efficient in our management. So, there's different strategies that work for different individuals on which account to draw their income from, and which account to not touch until a certain age, for an example. So, it's little things like that that I think were a big help to as well.
Eric, how have you seen the conversations change with clients over your years in this profession?
Well, I think they both hit on some very good points of how what people have heard. Traditionally, when it comes to investing, I say that people have their casino stories. If they're talking to their friends, they say how much money they made on this stock or that stock, but their friends forgot to tell them about the money they lost on this one or that one. So the influence of friends and neighbors, although important and certainly works well for us, that's the primary generation of any new client source we have, is from our clients talking to their friends and neighbors. But certainly that's one of the things that the reality needs to be pointed out to these individuals, and the account structure as well, trying to help clients understand that, so this is what you're looking for this money to do for you. This particular type of account is the more appropriate vehicle for that, and this is how it works. So the education on both sides, I think, is important.
Nick, you mentioned something, and this is a conversation that I think a lot of people have opinions on, and it's probably a newer thing, but you mentioned the difference between maybe someone puts their finances into an AI model and generates things. And one thing that's been fascinating to me is anytime people are really putting their money into things, they're going to want to do something with a person, whether that's financial planning, buying a home. The higher the stakes, the more personal they're going to want. And you guys talk about, from your perspective, just the benefit of actually sitting down with a wealth advisor, whether it's you all at Generations or not, versus just throwing it into a computer model. Your perspective and what you guys are learning as these different technologies advance, the benefit of having a person to sit and talk these things through.
I can start and then maybe pass it on to each of you, but I think the main thing is that connection with the person. So whether it's us or another advisor, the most important thing that I think of when I'm shopping for any professional in my life is to say, do they understand what I'm telling them? And are they picking up, the pieces that I'm kind of leaving behind? Because I may not be an expert in what I'm shopping. Actually, usually that's the reason you go and you look for an expert, right? Is because you aren't one. I would say the biggest thing there is having that same consistent person to come back to. There's a lot of things that technology does a really good job of, but there are many things that it doesn't. And empathy and emotions and trying to work through a more complex problem often is not the strength of technology, at least not yet. That may come someday, but for us now, I think that is the main benefit of having an advisor is I'm a real human being who has those same emotions. I can share with you how I'm working through watching a market go down, and it's uncomfortable, and you just don't want to lose all your life savings. Talking to somebody and talking through that and getting reassurance from another person that you trust and respect goes a lot longer way than typing into ChatGPT, when is the market going to come back up?
We always want those short-sighted answers, right? You want like the magic 8-ball answer, like when will things change or when will interest rates go down or whatever that might be. And that's not actually reality. It sounds like a lot of what you all are doing is let's get grounded in reality here. Any other responses on that last question?
Yeah. I mean, as the advisor, as we continue to work with our clients, gain their trust, but we also learn exactly what's important to them over the years. And we want to be the first call for our clients when anytime there's a big decision that they need to make or any decision of importance in their life. We want to be there for even if it's just for them to just speak out loud, so to speak, and speak their way through it. But we want to be there for them and help them through that time.
To that point, I always give the example of how a client called me one time asking about the best body shop in town. I mean, that's probably not in the realm of what a financial advisor would encounter, but the fact that that client or our clients trust us to ask a question like that means a lot to us. You know, going back to technology versus the personal interaction, ran into another advisor the other day, and they'd mentioned how much they love Zoom and how much easier it is to meet with their clients, which it is. We use uh, those types of programs. We've got clients in a number of different states that we meet with, but uh, even though you get to see them on a screen, there's nothing that replaces the in-person meeting. We do quite often a fair bit of travel to go see these clients from time to time, even if they don't come back to Michigan from time to time. So we think that's really important. You're not going to be able to get that from the AI bots.
Sure. Talk about just why you all are committed to going that extra mile and the difference you've seen that make. Like in some places, quite literally plotting out, okay, you're going to be in state, I'm going to come drive and see you or whatever that might look like. How does that, what are some stories of how that has benefited your clients? But I'm curious the impact that has on you all too, as you continue to grow in this profession.
For me, I don't know. There's not a whole lot out there more gratifying than having spent an hour and a half, uh, whether it's at their home, at a restaurant, wherever it might be, even here in the office. But to make those house calls, it makes it feel even more personal. And when you leave that meeting, you're like, wow, I really enjoyed spending that time with that person. I was chatting with a realtor the other day who was kind of just sharing his business a little bit, and he acknowledged as well. And I think that's the case in most professions. When it comes to something like this, it's very personal, and the success of any one professional, I think, still comes back to the individual relationship they have with their clients, regardless of the profession. But I'd like to think that's what makes us maybe a little bit better than others in our profession is that um, that personal relationship we try to create with each.
Yeah, I think it's just a gratifying feeling of going and being there in somebody's home or showing that extra bit of effort that goes a long way with the clientele. All we always want to provide the clients with the best possible performance or investment return or whatever the case is. But there's been a lot of studies done that's performance is not usually the primary reason that a client leaves an advisor. It's because they don't feel like they're either in tune with what that client needs or they don't have that personal touch. And just going that extra mile, I think, solidifies our relationship with them. And it builds a whole lot of trust on their side with us as well.
How would you guys speak to how that affects the different generations of clients you have? I think in some people's minds, like, well, okay, the older generations really like the handwritten letter, they like the face to face. Are you seeing that still have an impact as younger and younger clients are coming into is there still appreciation for that face to face?
I'd say the younger clients are still more towards Zoom. I think they, at least now where they're at in their life cycle, they prefer just a quick brief overview and then they're on with their day. But for our middle age, our older clients, they definitely still prefer the in person, as do we. But it could be a point where the younger clients start to lean that way too. We'll see.
one thing I've noticed is no matter the age of the client, when it comes to a really important decision, many people prefer to take the extra time, whether it's instead of a 15-minute check in, it's an hour Zoom call, or I want to come to the office and let's do this large rollover together. Or how am I funding the down payment on my house, right? Those conversations that are a little bit more critical, I think all of the age groups seem to appreciate having that extra personal touch and assistance with those different decisions.
Yeah, it might look different, right? A 1 hour Zoom call can feel like a really big investment for like a millennial or a Gen Z.
Right.
Whereas, that can almost feel like sitting down because of the world they grew up in. Like that could feel like having coffee or lunch or what have you.
I think though it's sometimes we might, to your point, take for granted that if an individual is a certain age, then this is the communication they like. I can tell you that's not the case. Quite often we'll be quite surprised about maybe an older client that actually prefers to text.
Sure.
So it I think it's important to understand that, but again, that comes back down to the individual, which generally speaking, we try to identify as an example, maybe one of the Kalamazoo clients calls in and catches Dylan, who maybe has never met with the person. Because he's been reading the notes in our CRM system, he can recognize quite quickly that this client prefers a phone call, or this client responds quicker to texts, so they'll know how to reach out to them in that fashion. Again, I think that's the team approach, but being able to identify that so that each team member has that leg up when that phone call comes in.
Yeah, it seems really important to not put someone in a box.
Right.
Right. You want to have that approach of, you might be able to guess what someone has, but being willing to shift if someone says, actually, yeah, shoot me a text. That works better for me. Or if someone who's younger, you're like, okay, we're gonna have a Zoom call, or actually let's meet for lunch or whatever. You want to be ready and willing to accommodate and make that space. So you guys have talked a lot about your personal approach. I want to take a second just to allow you guys to share a little about yourselves a little more personally. You've shared some of your journey here, but what are some things that you would like to start off with whenever you meet a new client, like your interests? What do you guys share about yourselves when you're first meeting with someone to help them get to know you as a person and begin to build that trust?
I think it's kind of important to let them do the talking first.
Yeah.
And then as they're going through things, ask them about their children, their family, their career. Along the line, you're going to find some way that you're going to be able to connect with them, and you'll be able to share a story that is along the lines of something they experienced. And I think that definitely helps create that initial connection outside of the numbers, right? That's the part that, wait a minute, that person does understand me because they experienced this or something along those lines.
Everybody has a family, so family's usually an easy thing to connect on. And if you come into the Kalamazoo office, I try to anyway make it pretty apparent that I am fairly family oriented, care a lot about my family and family time and doing things with them. So being able to connect on that level with clients, I think, is one of the ways that is easiest right off the bat. Having those similar family experiences or talking through recent events, that is usually a great connection point for me and clients.
And I'm the same way, very family oriented. We always refer to our closest friends as family members as well. So definitely at the top of the list for me. But also very interested in sports, big Detroit sports fan. And anything outdoors. I like to camp, hunt, fish, all of that. So there's a lot there to make connections with clients, especially in the area I'm at. A lot of the clients enjoy similar things as that. So
Going back to the beginning of our conversation, Erik, you mentioned that this was, I believe the phrase you used was something along the lines of a lifelong dream. Where did you first get the bug or the inkling that this is what you wanted to do? Obviously, it was a roundabout path to get here, as most things in life are, but what was that first exposure to financial planning work that really began to say, okay, someday I'd like to do that?
Well, I think it was probably the lure of the markets. I remember watching the secret of my success in the 80s, and that kind of intrigued me. I'm like, oh, that looks like a lot of fun. I also knew that it was going to take a lot of work to get started, so I think that was the careers that took me to get here. Finally put me here to be able to get through the lean years. But I think like many things, you have a perception of what things are, and then when you get there, it's tends to be much more rewarding, but not the way you'd expect it to be. Um, when you're able to put a plan in place and be able to pull the levers all along the way, and they work like they're supposed to, and to see that the individuals or families are directly affected by those levers that you pulled along the way that worked like they were supposed to is much more rewarding than watching a particular stock go up a day or two in a row. There's a lot more to it. Another way, I'll give this as a sidebar, as it's been kind of an eye opener for me. When I was first in the business, I was working hard trying to find as many clients as I could, and one of the individuals invited me to have breakfast at a Rotary meeting. And I walked in and I'm like, oh my goodness, look at all these retirees. This is going to be perfect. I'm sure that was an original thought, I'm sure. But I'll tell you, it only took a couple of weeks to realize that that's not why you join Rotary. I mean, I use Rotary, could be any other organization like that, but the satisfaction and gratification that you get by helping others through an organization like that. I'm not saying I did get clients through Rotary, but that certainly wasn't why I was there. And I learned that really quickly. And I think financial planning, kind of the same aspect. You get this vision of what you think it might look like, and then when you get there, you find out that it's much more rewarding, but for different reasons.
Yeah, thank you for that. That leads to my next question. What are some of those stories? Obviously, there's probably details you can't share and shouldn't share in this context, but what are some of those stories of success where you all that come to mind that really say, okay, this is why I do what I do?
Yeah, I've got good example that comes to mind. Even though Nick and we don't have the longest runway in the career yet, but we're starting to get to the point where we've seen a handful of clients transition from one stage of life to the next. So, big stage in this business is working with people to help them retire. So that's a very stressful time for some. Some people can't be more excited about it just to be there, but a lot of people are very nervous about that step, not knowing they're not going to have that steady paycheck coming in. What's the income going to look like? So, being able to be there and relieve a lot of that stress along the way, that's one of the most gratifying things about this business for me.
And what are the things you're reminding your client? What are the messages you're giving them when it comes to that transition point? It probably depends from client to client based on how you know them. But in this instance, what does that reassurance or encouragement look like?
And in most of these cases, we've had a plan in place for several years at that point. So they know what to expect, and we just have to reassure them that just keep sticking to the plan. This is working exactly how it's supposed to.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, a lot of just like, hey, we have like you said, things shift over time, but we have this plan. We've prepared for this. I don't know if any of you guys did sports, but I feel like when I was coming up, if you trusted your coach's process, it usually paid off. If you put in that work, it usually pays off. And I imagine it's pretty similar with you all. Nick, Erik, stories that come to mind that just encourage you that it's like, okay, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah, I think one very recently for me is having a spouse of a client who's not necessarily been as involved in these conversations. Not for lack of trying, but because it's not everybody's cup of tea, right, to talk about finances. Come to me at the meeting, get another instance where I'm actually in their home and having a meeting with them and say, hey, I understand that, we're not going to live forever. If my husband does go before I do, I just want you to know that I'm going to rely on you for all of this information. Like, I'm going to trust you to do what's right for me. And so I think that is to have that level of trust from a client, especially a spouse who maybe has not shown 100% interest in all of these different financial things that we're doing, that has been, in my mind, a great success, to me, to say, hey, I'm doing things right for these people if they trust me like that.
And so, yeah, it's got to be really meaningful to you when you leave those meetings. Like,
Absolutely.
oh, wow,
Yeah.
I've put in this work. And like you said, even just the kind of 1 degree of separation, that's great trust. Like, okay, I'm in, I'm here. And you see, I don't know if you can be more in, so to speak, but you're kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, it's a new level of trust to have somebody unprompted tell you,
Mhm.
hey, I trust you. I trust what you're doing. I don't have any doubt that if something happened to me or my family member, they would be taken care of, or I would be taken care of.
Eric, any
I'll give a couple. One thing is that, generally speaking, when you've got someone that's worked all their lives, they've saved as much as they could to make sure they're ready for retirement. One of the hardest things to do is to let them know, or teach them or coach them, this is why you saved. It's now time for you to start taking money out. That's one of the more uncomfortable things for most savers to do, is start taking money out when they've been trained just to keep putting in. And then another thing, I think sometimes fear isn't always about the dollar. I have a client that retired at 72. He was very scared, but not because he wasn't going to have enough money, but because he didn't know what he was going to do with his life. So my recommendation to him was to, go home, sit down, write down everything that you want to, call it a bucket list. I'd prefer not to call it a bucket list because that invites the inevitable, but, list a number of dreams that you have and then work backwards. Okay, now here's a target as to when you might want to complete this item, or you might want to go to this trip, or and then keep working back until you get to a point where you've got a schedule of the extra things in life that you want to do that aren't necessarily driven or motivated by money, but accomplishments or family gatherings or things that you want to put together. Um, have it written down. That way, you now have an outline of what your life is going to look like, and it's not tied to the dollar.
Yeah, and then go do it.
Right.
Then go do it. If someone, maybe they're not using a financial planner, what would your entry-level case be for someone to consider having an initial conversation with you all? What's the problem you're solving? What's the benefit of coming and, hey, I need your help? Where would someone begin to think about, okay, maybe I need a financial planner?
Usually it's, I think most commonly what I've found anyways, it's life changes. So again, going back to that, either just had a new child, have a child going to college, had a spouse pass, started a business, all these things. Hey, I need to seek some professional advice here. Usually that is the catalyst for people to move on something. I can think of a couple cases for client acquisitions recently where, you've had a company go through a lot of internal changes and people are a little bit uncertain about where things are going. So luckily we have good relationships with some other employees there, and they were the first people they thought of or we were the first people that they thought of to send them to. And so being able to share with them, hey, we've helped people in your similar situation, often provides a lot of initial trust, but initial satisfaction and a calming feeling for that client. I think ultimately that's kind of why people come for advice, is they want to feel heard and they want to feel like, hey, the decisions I'm making are not going to be detrimental to my situation. I just need to, I can relax because somebody else has their eyes on it.
Yeah, having someone to walk through
Yeah.
with it. It's not just themselves on it. Eric, Dylan, any other things that, like, so someone's beginning to think about maybe coming into the door, give you guys a call? What are some of the things they might be thinking through?
I think just to hear a second opinion on what they've done thus far. I mean, even if somebody has done a very good job of saving up to this point, they might need the reassurance from a professional saying, yes, you are on track. Everything looks good. Or maybe it's, what if we look at this option, start to make a shift to change the portfolio this way or that.
Generally speaking, I think most have identified what they think they need before they come talk with us, either through having a conversation with a friend or neighbor, or there's no shortage of sources on the internet these days, but sometimes to have someone to sit down and confirm their suspicions, I think, is really what they look to us for.
Yeah. Where do you all see generations going? Like, what's your hope? Not only for, I, I guess I don't want to put boundaries on that question. But where do you guys dream? You talk about the dreams of your clients, right? Helping them plan. Where do you guys hope to go individually, collectively, in serving your clients, in growing the business?
But I think we're all pretty much on the same page as far as not wanting to get too big to have that corporate feel. We still like the smaller, the team approach to advising, where a client can reach out to any one of us. So that more intimate relationship's very important to all of us.
I would definitely second that. I think that's the biggest thing is we want to be able to truly remain a team approach and a family oriented type of practice. And with that being said, I don't think that we want to put a limit on our growth as long as we can effectively service the clients and give them the individual attention that they deserve. We'll continue to do everything we can to grow the business and provide for our families and the families of those who, work for us or with us.
That question was recently asked to me, and I had a hard time answering it. Uh, I've always been in the growth stage, so I want to continue to grow, of course. I know when Dylan came on, we were talking to him about potential partnership. It wasn't shortly thereafter that we were discussing bringing Jake in as intern, and Dylan's like, "Well, if I'm buying into this company, how many other advisors is there going to be?" And the simple answer was, you have to have enough people, enough advisors to take care of the people that we have. I don't really know what that looks like in the end. I want to make sure that we continue to deliver to that personal relationship, that personal feeling. But I don't know what it feels like to not continue to try and grow.
Yeah, right. That's good. That's a good mindset. So, like, hey, let's keep going. Let's keep growing, pushing ourselves, and imagine that has an impact on your community at large. Like, how are you all involved? Obviously, with your clients, but what are ways that you like to be involved in the places where you actually do your work to impact the community as an organization?
Yeah, so in Jackson, I'm actually an ambassador for the Chamber of Commerce. So helping small businesses in the community. There's a lot of connections to be made with other professionals through that. And also just recently became the president of the Jackson Area State Planning Council. So trying to do my best to be networking with those other professionals, and hopefully I can bring some good things to the table for them to learn from, as I can learn from them as well.
For me personally, I've really, like Dylan, enjoy sports and doing things outdoors. So being part of the Special Olympics in the Kalamazoo area, helping coach some of those teams with my wife, that's been a really rewarding thing. And then really a lot of different service-oriented activities, whether that's, volunteering in the area with the ASPCA or ministries with community, and, just giving back to the community that we also serve. You make a lot of great connections and friendships that way. So that's always been probably my most gratifying thing that I do, maybe outside of the workspace.
I'd mentioned Rotary, but sometimes being present personally is a little more challenging than maybe supporting them financially. Occasionally, we'll have someone bring to us a charitable, whether it's a golf outing or whatever it might be. It feels good to be able to support the cause that they are passionate about themselves. Selfishly, there's a little bit of advertisement in there as well, but it does feel good to know that we're supporting them financially, knowing that gets somewhere. But I mentioned earlier about Rotary. There's do a lot of good.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. It's not a commercial about Rotary.
There you go. Well, that'll be a different podcast. That's right. We'll talk about that at a different time. All right, a couple more questions before we wrap up here. I imagine each of you has a unique approach to the way you do this. And I imagine that there are different rabbit trails that you could each go down. It's sort of what a friend of mine calls your nerd button. So whether it's let's stick it into work. Like, what is the piece where you have to find yourself holding back when a client brings up a certain question? Like, obviously you're not going to like hold back valuable information, but what's the part of your job that you can just absolutely nerd out about, and you find yourself even off work hours doing research, studying, can talk endlessly about? And if it's not in work, we'll give you a pass. You can talk about that as well too. If you're like, I love trout fishing, like, well, this is your space as well. So just what's each of your nerd buttons?
I think mine work related is the financial plan. I mean, I could spend hours in that planning software, changing the timing of Social Security or retirement age, and just trying to find the exact scenario that has the best outcome.
So it's like a game or a puzzle. Like, okay, if it's 47 and a half or at 62 or whenever that might be. Anyway, I ain't trying to find, okay, all right.
Mine, I think, has come to be the technology side of things, to the point where I probably annoy these two with all the ideas that I find or bring up. But yeah, if clients start asking about like, oh, well, how does this system work? Or, how are you able to take care of all these families and different models and things at once? That type of stuff I can talk about pretty much nonstop. I just like figuring out how all those different pieces fit together from a technology standpoint, and how we can make our business more efficient and serve the clients better using those pieces of technology. So that's probably my nerd button there.
There you go.
I don't know if I think the history and economy a little bit. It's been, as I mentioned earlier, politically sensitive. Fortunately, I find myself right close to center. As you might imagine, you find some that are far right and far left. We had a gal in shortly after the president won, and she was very, very concerned, almost to the point of tears. And I had to kind of point out that, these things, we've been here before. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Not my coin, someone else coined that, but I like it. And I explained to her, I said, 4 years ago when the other side won, I was sitting with the client, much like yourself, with the same concerns. We've been here before, and we'll go through and be fine on the other side. So I think sometimes just trying to point out to individuals that do have that fear or passion, sometimes you get, well, this time it's really going to run because my guy won. I think sometimes it's important to point out, this is what we've seen historically, and I don't expect to see significant amount of change. Yes, this time it's different, but when isn't it? It's always different.
Yeah. I'm just curious, and how do you guys, like, what are some moments where all three of your sort of focuses have come together? Like, you talk about that team approach, like when you're in a conversation, are these the areas that you find your positions kind of speaking from?
I think the investment decisions are probably the easiest thing to point to. Is we've been able to, pat ourselves on the back here, but make some pretty good investment decisions, just putting our minds together. And, that doesn't always mean that they're comfortable decisions to make for some of us. And often that's when the best decisions are made, is when they're a little bit uncomfortable. But I think we do a really good job of coming together. And if the timing doesn't work on something, being able to sit on our hands or wait and understand that, hey, there's two sides to the story, or often more than two sides to the story. So maybe we need to hold off on a change for now, or maybe this is something we should really be looking at. But to that point too, there's not really judgment between us. I would say you have to have the space to come forward with ideas and understand that you're not going to be reprimanded for coming through with an idea that somebody doesn't agree with.
Yeah. So when the transition time for each of you comes, what do you hope each of your individual legacies would be with the clients you work, but the impact you would have on your community, on generations, on the group of clients that you work with? What do you hope that story looks like when you make that transition for yourself?
Well, I think it's in the name of our business with generations. We really do want to help that next generation. Whether it's somebody receiving an inheritance and not knowing exactly what to do with it, or somebody wanting to open an account for a child or grandchild. We do want to make that next step and help them out as well.
I think for me, it's been really gratifying to, uh, many of these clients. I've met with all of Kalamazoo and Jackson, and to get positive feedback from one of those clients that I haven't personally been involved with for the last year or so, um, when they send me a note or give me a call saying, "Hey, Nick, I really enjoy working with him. I feel very comfortable," or "I'm really pleased that Dylan was able to answer these questions, and I really like working with him." That to me, I think is what I want my legacy to be. I want every client to make sure that although I may not be the one that's meeting with them all the time, they know that I'm still the person that I am. We have that relationship, but yet now they have that same relationship with the next generation, and they know that that next generation will take them on to where they need to go if I'm not personally able to.
I think for me, it's just the appreciation when you have a client who will say, hey, these people care about me and they did what was right for me. Not everything, stocks don't always go up, right? But if you provide the right service, I think your legacy is written in a way where you have people leaving your office saying, I feel good about the work they're doing for me. And to me, that's probably my most important thing to leave behind for every client I meet.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you guys for having me. I guess the last thing is if someone were interested in beginning a conversation with you all, how would they go about that? And just a reminder of where you are located.
Yeah, online we're on all the, Facebook, LinkedIn are the two main social platforms we're on right now, but online you can find us at www.genfinplan.com, genfinplan.com, and all of our contact information is there. You're more than welcome to call any of the three of us or email us or do the intake form. We'll get it one way or another, and we're happy to reach out and have a conversation.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. And for those who are listening to this episode, thanks for checking it out, and we'll see you in the next one.
We are all on our own journey, and our stories help us understand where we've been, where we are, and where we're headed. Your story is uniquely valuable because there is no one else like you. And by sharing it, you can help others connect to their own journeys. So wherever you're going, go as only you can go. Lead with story. The music for Lead with Story was created and provided by Joshua Dregge. Lead with Story is a production of Forerunner Story Company. Forerunner Story Company serves individuals, teams, businesses, and brands in helping them discover, craft, and share their story in a meaningful way. For more information, you can visit forerunnerstoryco.com.